your audio. Now it'll work.
Now you will be able to talk in here.
Now go ahead and maximize it. Make sure you're in there. Okay.
Gwen, this is Mary Ann.
Okay.
I am ready for eScript.
Okay. Great. Okay. We will call this administrative and finance meeting to order. Good afternoon. It is May 6th, 2020. And we are doing this virtually, so I have some information I'm going to give everyone at the beginning. First of all, welcome. All of the members of this committee are attending from a remote location. We are holding this meeting virtually, so we will be doing public comment a little bit differently than usual. We're going to be using a live call-in phone line, just like if you call into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon, or if you all remember dialing for dollars. That's what we're doing today. So I will call for general public comment first, and it can include both items not on the agenda as well as items on the agenda, just so that we try and give everyone as many chances as possible to comment. We will also publish those numbers in a minute. We'll put them on the screen, so get a pen and paper if you want to write them down. It is a little bit long. So if you call in, you'll be placed in a waiting room. I would recommend that you turn off your computer or TV because there will be an echo. There is also a lag time. So by the time you finally hear me welcoming you for public comment, please go ahead because there is a lag time. So we want to try and close that. I think that'll do it. So let's publish those numbers first, and then I will do roll call. All right. Great, thank you. And just to reiterate that, I'm going to read this out loud. The phone number to dial is 253-215-8782. And the meeting ID number that you will need is 960-049-3694. Okay, we're going to do roll call for all those who are present. So Anderson. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Do you need me to say yes?
Yes, sorry. Please say yes. Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp, I believe, is absent today. Jordan Hess.
Yes, here.
Gwen Jones is present. Julie Merritt.
Present.
Jesse Ramos, I believe, is absent. Amber Sherrill.
Here.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Brian von Lossberg.
Present.
And Heidi West.
Present as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to go to my agenda. We have one item today on our agenda for administration and finance. Sorry, my computer screen went blank here. Let me just pull it up super quickly. Okay. Oh, well, first of all, let's, is there any public comment on items not on the agenda or on the agenda? Let me see if we have anyone waiting in our waiting room. And I don't see anyone. So at this point, we will go on with our main item today, which is, let me pull it up here. you know what? I'm looking at the wrong agenda here. Sorry. So Lee, could you read the first item that we're supposed to hear while I fix my screen here? Thank you.
Certainly. Today, I am asking City Council to approve and then approve on the consent agenda a resolution relating to the financing of proposed sewer system improvements, establishing compliance with reimbursement bond regulations under the Internal Revenue Code. And if it's okay with the chair, I'd like to speak to that item.
That would be great. Thank you.
So this is one of those items that we bring to City Council that we often term as a housekeeping item, because it's something that we're required to do, but not any, other than passing this resolution, nothing exactly happens right now. This resolution, if we pass this resolution, this enables us to issue tax-exempt debt at some point in the future to finance these sewer projects, and tax-exempt debt tends to have better economic terms for the city. We tend to pay much lower interest rates and have better overall terms. So again, this is just being in compliance with the Internal Revenue Code and their requirements. And we list a bunch of projects and a dollar amount that captures the majority of the wastewater CIP, capital improvement plan. That's a 5-year plan, but we're looking forward. So these are approximately projects for, coming up towards the end of FY20 through FY24. But those projects might change as circumstances change and so forth. Again, this resolution just enables us to issue tax-exempt debt should we choose to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Are there any questions from council regarding this item in front of us today? Sandra.
So when you say issue tax exempt debt, does that mean that we will be taking on the debt, or we are issuing it to somebody else takes on the debt?
We would be issuing the debt. So it would most likely be bonds that we would sell, tax-exempt bonds. So then we receive the face value of those bonds in cash to pay for the projects at the time. And then we usually have terms that are consistent with the life of a project. So for a wastewater capital project, for example, we would then be paying that back over principal and interest over a period of 20 years. Is an average.
Okay, I know you've explained that to me before. Thank you. I'm still trying to wrap it around my head.
Thanks, Lee. Are there any other questions? Then I am looking for a motion. Mr. Hess.
I'd make the recommended motion.
Thank you. We will see if there's any public comment. If anyone wants to call in, we'd love to have public comment. I don't see anyone in the waiting room right now, but I will keep looking. In the meantime, is there anyone on council that wanted to make a comment on this motion? No. Okay. Seeing no one in the waiting room for public comment, we will therefore take a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Vote was unanimous in favor.
Thank you. That will go on to the consent agenda. We have no other business. Thank you everyone for your patience, and I hope that the information regarding the virtual meeting and how to do public comment is getting out there. We will also be giving that information out at the beginning of every single committee meeting. So stay tuned if you're hanging on for one in the future. Thank you, and we will be adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to, what is our next? Next meeting is Public
Me.
Works. So, did I forget anything? Merta, I'm going to,
So you're aware, since we're keeping this same Zoom meeting up for the entire day
Okay.
and then reconvening,
So are you done
if you
then?
say anything on camera
Technically,
after
yes.
a meeting has adjourned, everybody can hear it.
Are you doing?
It
Um,
should-
it can still be heard.
So I should stay on this meeting and not exit out and click on the link for the next one.
We should probably just mute and exit out and then come back in, come back in when it's time for the next meeting.
Merita, I just made you the host for the next meeting, okay?
Okay. Thanks.
So Mirta, I think Gwen or you should mute all of us. So just that we're already all muted. And then
Merita is the host, so she has that capacity.
copy that.
Okay, so
When's our start time, Mirta? Is it 1:50?
150.
1:50, okay.
Okay, I'll see you all in a bit. Hi, Katie.
Hey, Marta, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to get it right there.
Find the right angle.
Yeah, pretty much. It looks like admin finance went really well. I watched that.
So let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's see. Katie, I'm going to keep you muted until we start, okay?
Mirta, did you mean to just unmute us all?
Yes. Just because I want to hear from Marianne whenever she's ready.
Aaron, could you rename yourself, please? Include your last name.
Yeah, I can try. I'm not sure that I actually can
I bet I have to do that.
rename. Yeah, I think Mirta, you might have to.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, come on, Michelle, don't panic. Heather Harp. Mirta, I've told Michelle Blackman, who's running eScribe, to let you know when she's ready.
Okay.
Jordan. Gwen. Gwen is here.
Yeah.
Mirta, you might want to present or mute the Marty Rabine square.
Muting all of you until I hear, well.
On this computer, just so you know. Just so you're aware. Okay, we are all set. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting. Just a couple of informational things for everyone as we move along this different platform. All the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. We are holding this meeting virtually, so we'll be doing public comment a little bit differently this time. It'll be done via live call in a phone line, just like when you call into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon. I'll call for public comment and on that item. And I will take comments on items that are on the agenda and items that are not on the agenda. I will also open the public comment phone lines on each agenda item. Each time we call for public comment, we'll put the numbers on the screen and the meeting ID and give you some time for you to go to your phones and call in. But you might want to write down the numbers. And we also ask that you mute your TV or computer because there can be some echo. And also please be aware that there's a delay of about 50 seconds from what you're hearing at home and the actual meeting. So it's okay to begin speaking right away when I call on you, and I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. Okay, so with that, I will do a roll call for members present. And I am going to unmute you so that you can respond. Unmute. Okay. So Stacy Anderson.
Present.
Mirta Becerra is here. John Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp. So she's absent. Jordan Hess.
Present.
Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Merritt.
Present.
Jesse Ramos. Jesse's absent. Amber Sherrill.
Here.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Brian von Losberg.
Present.
And Heidi West.
Present.
Okay. So with that, we move next to approval of minutes. We don't have minutes from the last meeting. And I will now open it for public comment on items on the agenda and not on the agenda. And if we could have that, the phone numbers on the screen, please. Okay,
Mirta, I do see minutes from March 11th on the agenda.
okay, thank you. So maybe while we wait for any public comment, let's do a, are there any changes or amendments to those minutes? And you can raise your hands. Okay. Could we have a roll call vote to get those approved?
Hey, Merita, this is Brian. You could, for the minutes, as is our normal procedure, just barring any changes from anyone, those could stand approved. And if no one's raised their hand to note a change, you could just have those approved.
Okay, that sounds good. So I don't see anyone wanting to make changes or amendments to those minutes. So they will stand approved. Okay, and I don't see anyone from the public wanting to make public comments. So we'll move on to our business for today. First on the agenda, we have a water site management agreement with Gecko Fence and Landscape. And Katie Emery is here to present. So I'll turn it over to you, Katie.
Okay, I'm Katie, I'm the admin services manager for the utilities. And we're asking to approve and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Gecko Fence and Landscape at a cost not to exceed $30,870. We do have 2 positions open with the utility for water site maintenance. One of them is filled. The other gentleman did quit beginning of April. So we don't have time to hire and maintain all of our sites with our current hiring freeze. So we are having to contract this out for this season, and then we'll look at rehiring this position as soon as that's available to us.
Thanks, Katie. Are there any questions from committee members about this item? Let me start a Ms. Vasika.
I just wanted to make a note that on my schedule, it looks like this is item 3.2 instead of 3.1. So I just wanted to make a note of that.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Because of timing conflicts, we have switched the 2 items that we have on the agenda. So we'll be hearing this one first and then the bill grant next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for noting that. Amber.
I just wanted to confirm this is fully funded through the Water Enterprise Fund. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thanks.
Julie.
So you mentioned that we're contracting for this because we were not able to keep someone in that position that was hired to do the work. So would that mean if we are able to rehire that we wouldn't complete the rest of the season with this company, or do we anticipate that we're going to keep them on for the rest of the season?
I do anticipate we'll keep them on for the rest of the season. I don't anticipate us releasing the hiring freeze in time, and then it takes about 2 to 2.5 months. So we should be about early fall.
Sandra.
I'll just make the recommended motion.
Thanks. Okay, so we have a motion. We have had questions from council members. Can we open it for public comment, please? I don't see anyone on the waiting room, but I would like to give them a minute just in case they want to comment on this. Okay, doesn't look like we're getting any comments, so we have a motion on the floor. Could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
Murta,
Yes.
John Contos,
Yes.
Gwen Jones,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Amber Cheryl,
Yes.
Sandra Vasica,
Yes.
Brian von Lasberg,
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
So we have 9 yeses and,
This is Jordan. I got skipped, but I'll vote yes.
oh, I'm so sorry, Jordan.
It's okay.
Jordan, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 10 yeses and no yo.
Okay, so the motion is approved, and it'll be on our consent agenda. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, guys.
See you next time. Next item on the agenda is a resolution of support for the 2020 Build Grant, and Aaron Wilson is here to present.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. Aaron Wilson, the city's transportation planning manager, sitting in for Jeremy on this item. He had a conflict, so I can give a quick update and overview of the resolution. It's in support of a 2020 build grant application. So for those of you who are around this time last year, you'll remember there was a similar resolution that went through city council, essentially supporting the 2019 build grant application. This is for the area that is west of Reserve Street between Mullen Road and Broadway, completing the collector grid network out there, and some multi-use paths, and getting a little bit ahead of the development. So the county was successful in getting 13 million of the full 23 million, a little over $23 million that was requested. And so moving forward, the county and the city are already moving forward with that first phase of funding that was awarded through build in 2019, but there was a $10 million gap between what was requested and what was awarded. And so the city and the county are again partnering to submit a grant request to get that remaining $10 million to be able to complete the project in that area, and do it as timely as possible. So this resolution is continuing on what city council submitted back in 2019, and essentially committing to the same level of funding coming from the city. So that would be up to $2 million from transportation impact fees or gas taxes, and then some additional utility funding to help with completing those utility connections along with the street infrastructure. Other than pursuing a new grant application, there's not a whole lot that's different in the resolution. The benefits that we anticipate seeing from this project are largely the same. The dollar commitment hasn't changed from the previous resolutions. It's just being updated to reflect that we may have 2 separate grant awards that we would be supporting. And then yeah, I think that those are the main details included in this resolution. So it's really just continuing, expressing council's continued support to fund that project at the previous commitment, if those additional grant funds are awarded in 2020. So with that, if there are any questions or something that I haven't covered in enough detail, I'm happy to answer anything and here for questions.
Thanks, Aaron. I see a couple of hands up, so I will start with Stacy Anderson.
Thanks, Mirta. Aaron, just a couple of questions in regards to the timeline, just because, you know, some of us were here last time and some of us weren't. So if you could walk us through kind of the grant timeline and then the process that the county and the city kind of goes through in coordination with our federal delegation, I think that would be important.
Yeah, so Build is typically an annual funding program that the FHWA goes through. It's funded through the FAST Act, which was our most recent transportation authorization bill. So we're in kind of the last year of that bill. So this, for now, is potentially the last year of Build funding. Those requests for applications go out, you know, it varies from year to year. But the deadline for this current round is in a couple of weeks. And so the city and the county are working on that grant application and getting it updated. Again, not much has changed in the application because it's for the same overall project. We're just requesting that additional funding to sort of complete the project. So once the grant application is submitted, it goes through review at FHWA and the Department of Transportation. One of the key components of these grants, even though there's criteria that you have to meet and they're competitive, at having some political support and community support behind these projects really goes a long way to getting those awards. So in the last round in 2019, Missoula sent a delegation that included elected officials, folks from the development community, realtors, Chamber of Commerce. There was a really broad coalition of folks supporting this project. Went to DC, met with our federal delegation, with DOT folks, and really showed that there's strong community support behind this project. And we've seen on these Build grant applications in particular that kind of support and advocacy really helps make those a successful request. So I imagine there will be some more of that with this current request. That would happen sometime over the summer or fall, and we would likely know late summer to early fall whether this request would be successful. Typically takes 3 to 6 months between when the applications close and when they're making those announcements. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the timeline. I mean, for those of us who this is what we do all the time, we track this closely, but for the broader public, I think it's important to highlight this. And then if the chair would allow just one follow-up.
Go ahead.
Is this I realize how the federal government appropriates dollars changes in a somewhat a fluid situation, but in this sort of round of doing it via the Build grants, is there precedence, I guess, for communities who don't get awarded the full ask amount in the first bite of the apple per se, having an opportunity and being successful when they go to try for a second round to complete those funds?
Sorry. Yeah, I think you do sometimes see that, and especially with smaller requests like this. In the grand scheme of things, when you might have other projects that are requesting, $50 or $100 million, that each state, with Build, each state, they try to apportion a certain amount of those funds. And so Montana can be fairly competitive because there aren't always, the same number and volume of projects. We also heard in the last round that they wanted to award the full amount, but that there wasn't sufficient funding to make it a full award of the 23 million requested. So I think that there is support both from our federal delegation and there was interest from the DOT, Department of Transportation, to fully fund this project. And so I think it puts us in a good position to be really competitive. Obviously, every round is different because you never know what projects are coming through and how they're going to be scored and ranked. But We can demonstrate that we've made significant progress on the first amount of funding. We are further along than we were in the last grant request in terms of engineering and right of way and some of those other things that might be seen as a potential risk for the project. And so, that just makes the application that much stronger this time around. So, it's never a guarantee, but I think it puts us in a good position.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron. Next I have Sandra.
I have a few questions. Did you want me to ask them one at a time, or did you want me to get back in the queue after each one?
I think one at a time is fine.
Okay. So is the $2 million contribution from the city required to get the grant, or is it just like a show of good faith?
Well, it was part of the previous grant request and award. Typically, again, with these grants, there's not always a requirement that you have a local match, but I don't know that I've ever seen a project awarded that didn't have a substantial local contribution. And, that can range. Sometimes, the local entities have 60 or 70% of the project funded and they just need to make up that final 30. Sometimes it's, more in the realm of 20% coming from local entities. So in order to be competitive, there is a strong indication that if you don't have that local commitment and support, that you would not be successful in those grant applications. That said, we are committed to a part of that 2 million because we were awarded the 10.19 or the 13 million in the last round, and there's an expectation that the project gets whatever piece we can complete within that 13 million, that there's a local component of that, or that we complete the project. And so we are committed to some portion of that 2 million already through that initial grant award. And this wouldn't be changing the city's commitment from the full grant application. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it did answer it. Thank you. And also, I noticed that the $2 million will come from impact fees and gas tax. The city isn't in charge of the rate, like the state gas tax. So is this in case that the one on the ballot on June 2nd passes? Is that where that's coming from, or how?
No. No. So the city has a number of transportation funds that we can use for projects like this. Impact fees are one that we get those obviously from, as new development occurs, they're paying into impact fees, and the intended use of that is to improve the transportation system and mitigate the impacts of that new development. And so this would certainly be an instance of that where the congestion and the need for a collector system in this area is certainly being impacted by that new development. Gas tax are another source that we get. So it's collected at a statewide, but then every city and community in the state gets a certain amount of that statewide gas tax for local use. And so there's two pieces to that. There's the, I can't remember the exact name, but there's the standard statewide gas tax that we've had for decades. And then there's also the gas tax increase that the state legislature passed in, I believe, 2015. That has been slowly ramping up over the last several years, and I think has a maximum of 8 cents per gallon once it's all fully implemented. And again, we collect a certain amount of that a certain amount of that comes back to the city for use on our own projects. So a lot of that goes to roadway maintenance or other projects, but it is a source that we get a certain amount from the state from those gas tax revenues.
Okay, I didn't know that. And then my last question is, if we did not contribute the $2 million, what part of the project will not get completed?
I don't know that we could deliver, in order to deliver the full project in the way that we've applied for and what the grant award is expecting, those local sources between the city and the county, I don't think we could deliver the project. And so I think we wouldn't be able to accept the grant funds without those local dollars to make sure that we can complete the project. So in that sense,
okay.
It's really critical for these grants that we have those local sources to match the federal funds.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Okay. Good questions. Jordan.
Thanks. Can I make the motion at this time?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
you can.
I'd like to make the recommended motion, and then I'd like to speak to it.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm really pleased that the city and county are submitting this again. I had the pleasure of being part of the Build Grant delegation that went to DC last year, and it truly was one of the most collaborative experiences that I've had on council, from different jurisdictions, city, state, county, as well as the private sector. We had great participation from the Chamber of Commerce, and they were fantastic partners in this, as well as a number of others, the Organization of Realtors and others. So I think it's really a great example of what we can do if we collaborate amongst different sectors. It's a great example of the grant itself is an acronym, which is better utilizing investments to leverage development, and that's exactly what we're doing. Is we're using public infrastructure dollars to leverage economic development and the development of this, in this case, of homes that people can afford. We are able to go in and put in a lot of infrastructure in advance of development, and that allows us as the public sector to shape that development, and it allows us to really influence what that development looks like. So it's really win-win. We make it easier for orderly development in an area that we expect a tremendous amount of housing growth and job growth. We make it we are able then to shape that through our grant application and through the street design. And so really it's a fantastic program. And it's incredibly competitive. In the past couple of cycles, about 10% of the projects have been awarded. And so I think it's a testament to the strength of our application and our team that put that together, that we received the last grant. And you know, you don't receive grants like this if you don't ask, and so it's good that we're putting in again and seeking additional funding. So I'm wholeheartedly supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. And I see Julie Merritt as a hands up.
I just wanted to clarify one point from Sandra's question in regards to the gas tax. The gas tax that's going to be on the ballot is an increase in the existing gas tax. We've had gas tax in the state that's been delegated to cities and communities across the state for many years. So that's been an existing source of revenue for us to do street projects. So that's an important thing for the public to understand. We're not counting on something that's on the ballot that might be voted on or might be voted down in the future. It's money that we're already going to have. And I just wanted to make that clear for the record.
Thanks, Julie. I see Amber Cheryl next.
Yeah, thanks. I'm supporting this motion. I think having come from the nonprofit sector and seeing how much we have to leverage and work to leverage every dollar that you get in a nonprofit with grants and matching funds, even from the open space bond campaign, talking about how that was a 4-to-1 match. You know, these, I'm excited to see, sitting on council, excited to see how much that happens with the city as well. And I think that's is a great example of that. And so I'm just fully supportive of it. Good luck.
Gwen?
I just wanted to thank Jordan for his comments and Aaron for presenting on this, and just echo those comments, Jordan, but also just say on my own that I really appreciate these projects. Jordan's absolutely right. The collaboration that came from the private sector and local government to try and get the grants over the years and was successful last year is a huge, huge heavy lift. And I think we've got a good formula, we have good working relationships, and it's really important to keep going forward with this. But having been on council for 5 years and heard on and on, over and over, the fact that we have housing issues in Missoula, affordable housing issues, and also, although it is not my ward, the fact that out in the Mullen Road Reserve area, the lack of infrastructure is a huge issue. So this is one of the fixes that can go in out there. And it was great getting the award last year, but it's something to build on. So I'm very encouraged by this, and good luck. Yes, good luck getting this next one would be great. So thanks so much for all of your work on it.
Okay, and I see Amber's hand up again.
Sorry, I'm driving Mirta crazy with the hand raising because two people asked questions that I had. So I lowered my hand, then I raised it, then I lowered it. I will try not to do that to every chair in this format, but I'm just kind of curious, Erin. We're all reading different things about COVID and about how that's affecting different aspects of our economy, including municipal funding, depending on what the structure of your municipal or state funding is. And so I'm just curious generally if you have any sense of what people are predicting might change around some of these federal grants and transportation monies and things like that.
Yeah, well, predicting federal funds is notoriously hard to do. But I will say that from the city side, and I'm definitely not an expert on those projections, but it doesn't appear that development is slowing down much right now. That it appears to be going strong. So the impact fee source of revenue, those developments are going to continue, and we're going to continue to have a revenue source there and a need to address those impacts. From the federal side, the build grant funding, that's part of the fiscal year 2020 authorization bill, or the appropriations bill. So that money is already set aside for build. So I don't anticipate COVID affecting that. The other uncertainty piece around infrastructure funding is whether or not there would be a stimulus bill around helping to provide relief, particularly to states for the anticipated drop in gas tax revenue. We do know that vehicle trips are down maybe 30 to 40%. It varies widely from state to state in different locations, but I suspect we're seeing that here too. So we can anticipate at least a temporary drop in gas tax revenue. And so, there's a lot at play there, whether the federal government passes some stimulus that helps offset that loss for states, what the significance or how much gas tax revenue drops off. There's just a lot of uncertainty there. But for this particular project, I think the revenue should be fairly stable. So the build grant program is funded, impact fees, we're continuing to collect those. And so we're not anticipating that there being a significant gap there.
Thanks. I'm just interested in every aspect of the economy that this is changing and affecting. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, and we have a motion on the floor, so I'm gonna open it for public comment. And while I give the public a minute to call in case they're planning to call in, I'll just add my 2 cents to this, and that is that we submitted a very competitive and strong application first go around, and I feel that asking for the remainder of that money will serve us really well in the future, and we would be remiss to not do it. We are investing time and money into setting up a plan, a land use and zoning plan for that area. And that can only come to fruition if we have the infrastructure in place. So it's important that we apply for this grant so that we're not having to cover that cost on our own. I feel good about how robust an application we can put in given what we submitted in the past. So yes, best of luck, but I'm excited about the potential success of this submittal. With that, I don't see anyone waiting to provide public comments. So we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta?
Yes.
John Contos,
Yes.
Jordan Hess,
Yes.
Gwen Jones,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Amber Sherrill,
Yes.
Sandra Vasika,
Yes.
Brian von Losberg,
Yes.
and Heidi West.
Yes.
Okay, we have unanimous.
Okay, and that is the last item on our agenda. So if there are no additional comments from council members, seeing none. Okay, so we will be adjourned and I will make Jordan Hess the host for the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
Well done, Mirta.
Mhm.
Feels like we're in winter again all of a sudden. All my blossoms are blowing off of my trees out there.
I know, it's very blustery.
I know, I don't like that.
It's going to be great by the weekend, though.
Yeah, I know, that's what I saw. I'm excited.
I was like, what's Dustin Hoover doing on my screen?
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B,
Okay, we're going to just wait a couple more minutes for a few more people to join the meeting and for our technology to be ready. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the Land Use and Planning Committee to order. I want to welcome everyone to our virtual meeting format. It's great to see committee members as well as our presenters calling in. So just so everyone knows, all of our members are attending virtually. I do want to thank our committee staff and our city clerk's office who are on site. We do need someone on site to make these things work and to get everything onto MCAT, and so appreciative of that. The rest of us are virtually. So we'll be handling public comment a little bit differently than we do during a live in-person meeting. We'll be doing that via a live phone call on a dedicated phone line, just like if you were calling into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon or pledge week or something. So what I'm going to do is call for general public comment and also comment on items on our agenda at the same time. So we can go ahead and open the public comment line at this time. And Kendra, if you wouldn't mind putting the slide up with the phone numbers, I'd appreciate that. So the phone numbers are here on the screen, and I will also read them out. You can make public comment by calling 253-215-8782. And when prompted, you can give the meeting ID 960-049-3694. When you call in, you'll be placed into a waiting room, and I will take calls in the order that they come in. When I call on you, please mute your TV or your computer, or else there will be an echo. And then tell us your name for the record and give us your comment. Please be aware that there's a delay about 45 seconds to a minute from what you're hearing at home and the actual meeting. So just be aware of that if you call, that you can start speaking right away when I call on you. We will be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes, as we always do. So we can go ahead and get started. Again, the public comment is available, and feel free to call in at this time for anything on our agenda as well as non-agenda items. So with that, we can move into our roll call. And I will just call everyone, and if you would just indicate if you're present, that would be great. So Anderson.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Contos.
Here.
Great. Harp is absent. Hess is here. Jones.
Present.
Merritt.
Here.
Ramos is absent. Cheryl.
Present.
Pasica.
Present.
Von Lossberg.
Present.
And West.
Present.
Great, thanks. We have minutes from April 22nd. Are there any changes to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will be approved. So again, public comment, feel free to call in at this time if you'd like to comment on non-agenda items, as well as on the Hellgate Village subdivision cash in lieu of parkland. So we do have a number of people here for this item. We have Neil Miner to provide our staff report. And we have Ryan Sudbury from the City Attorney's Office and Mary McCrae from Development Services. And on behalf of the development team, I think what I'll probably do is just let Nick introduce everyone that's here when we get to that portion. This is the Hellgate Village subdivision cash in lieu of parkland, and I'll turn it over to Neil for our staff report.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen
and I think we have a question from Julie Merritt as well, it looks like.
Just for the record, Ryan Sudbury is showing up on the screen as Juniper Davis. So I don't know if the presenter or Marty is able to change that.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't change it on my end for whatever reason.
I can change it. I'll do that.
Thanks, Drew.
Is that showing up all right on everyone's screen?
Yep.
Okay, looks a little weird on mine, but so this is the Hellgate Village cash in lieu of parkland dedication. The Hellgate Village subdivision is just south of Pleasant View in that yellow area, just east of Flynn Lane, and south, that road that kind of dead ends into the property is Mary Jane Boulevard. Background on the project, it went through a minor subdivision process and was approved by council in October of 2019. Council authorized a development agreement for the area in November of 2019, and then council approved the amendment to the growth policy and rezone of this area in later November of 19. As part of the subdivision regulations and cash in lieu of of parkland dedication, the developer is to submit appraisal report listing the fair market value of the land for the entire subdivision. There's calculations in, and we'll get to that to give the amount of area necessary for parkland, and then we and B right there, we bring it to council for their review and approval. This process kind of highlighted some issues in our subdivision regulations. There was, multiple steps that I listed in the background with the subdivision and the rezone, all in that area and happening in kind of concurrent processes, but not the same process. And then there was just some differences in the appraisal that kind of raised some questions in my mind. So we kind of ended up where we are. We're trying to move forward with this. One of those was just the value that it was purchased at 2 years ago until what the appraised value was different. And then the zoning, the old zoning that it was purchased at was inferior to what the new zoning is, and how that worked out with this appraisal. And, in the effort to move forward, staff is kind of taking our time with Ryan to address these issues to make sure that they kind of close these issues going forward. With that said, cash in lieu of parkland dedication, the calculation, the requirements for park dedication, it's in subdivision regulation 3-08.3a. 7.08 acres is the net lotted area, so that's minus like right of ways and everything. Times the maximum of 10 dwelling units per acre. That's a calculation in the subdivision regulations, and 0.02 acres. And that gives us the 1.416 acres required. The land value per the appraisal report was $770,000 for the entire 8.538 acres. And so it gives us that calculation about $90,000 and change per acre. That's the total lot size. So we derived the total acre cost or square foot cost, and that, calculating per acre to the 1.416 acres that were required gives us a value of $127,702. And so based on that, the recommended motion is that the Land Use Planning Committee recommends the City Council to approve the cash in lieu of parkland dedication for Hellgate Village minor subdivision, the amount of $127,702.
Thank you, Neil. At this point, I think we could take clarifying questions for Neil. I do believe that the developer's representative has a presentation as well. So just let's hold anything real substantive until after we hear that as well. Ryan or Mary, do either of you have anything you want to add before we move on to the developer presentation?
No.
No.
Okay, thanks. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you, and if you don't mind introducing everyone that is part of your team as well, just so we know who's available, and then you're welcome to share your presentation as well. And Nick, it looks like you're still on mute.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Great.
All right. So, hey, thank you this afternoon for everybody. And Neil, thank you for the presentation and the time you put into this, as well as Ryan Sudsbury and Mary McCrae. So with me today, not present, but virtually, are Chris Johnson, who's the attorney for HEH, and Dustin Hover, who's the engineer who's worked on the project. And we've all put a lot of time in on this, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I would like to share my screen, but you might have to give me a minute to figure out how to do that on your Zoom. So. All right, can you see that?
Not yet.
Well, it's perfectly clear up here in Trout Creek. I can see it.
Nick, if you'd like, I could share your slides, and then you could just tell me when to advance them.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay, give me just a moment.
So you would love it up here. I had 6 tom turkeys walk by about 6 feet from the front door of my trailer. They were all beard draggers. I'm not sure if that's a turkey hunting term, but they were really beautiful. So as Jordan loads that up, first we'd like to thank Parks and Rec, and we concur, Neil, with your recommendation. But there's some additional information we'd like to share with you guys. So I think Neil talked about the minor plat, and he talked about the subdivision regulations. And what we get into here is we submitted the minor plat back in May of 2019. And that subdivision or minor plat was just fine with the current Hellgate Meadows zoning. It did not require a rezoning. In fact, when we submitted the subdivision, we also submitted a rezoning request, and Development Service asked that we remove that zoning and do it separately. So we actually applied for the zoning in July of 2019. So the subdivision and zoning did not get submitted at the same time. So what we're providing for cash in lieu of parks is our common area in Hellgate Village amounts to about half an acre. Plus we're providing cash in lieu of parks, which is the market value of the 1.416 acres that Neil discussed. Plus we're providing a 3 to 4 acre park in the development agreement. So we're providing a lot more than just the cash in lieu requirement that we see in state law and city subdivision regulations. And then if you can see my slides, the last one, you'll see a little picture there. And so Dover Coal has been going through the Mullen Road master planning process. And if you look at,
I'm sorry, which slide do you want me to be on right now?
the last one, the third one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so in the third one, you can see right in the middle of the screen in white, the 55.7 acres that we call Hellgate Village. And that was the area considered for the entire rezoning. Hellgate Village itself is, as Neil had in his first slide, up in the northern portion up against Pleasant View. What's illustrated here is what comes off of the Dover Coal webpage, which shows instead of a 3 to 4 acre park, about an 8 acre park in the location of the 3 to 4 acre park that was approved in the development agreement. So we'll see how that master plan plays out, but that's almost double the size of the park in that 57.5 acres for that planning effort. And then of course you can see the Pleasant View Park just a little bit north of the subdivision, which is in the neighborhood. And right next to us on the east is the Hellgate Meadows Park and the development agreement park, as well as the now expanded 8 acre proposed park connects to the Hellgate Meadows Park. And then of course, right across the street from us and just a little bit north is the campus of Hellgate Elementary with their activity and play fields. So you take everything into consideration, there's an awful lot of park here, and there's an awful lot of park that's coming with the development. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. And once again, thank you, Neil and Mary and Ryan and committee members.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. So now we could move on to questions from the committee. Sandra.
I just want to make sure I have this right. I've never quite heard of this term before. So can you kind of explain it in layman terms? What I'm kind of gathering is that instead of doing the parks requirement, you're giving the city cash, or do I have that completely off?
Yeah, that's a fairly accurate summary of it. Mary, can you talk a little bit about just the cash in lieu provisions and how those are applied generally?
Okay, this is Mary McCrae, and cash in lieu is one of the options for a developer to provide their land dedication, which is a requirement in the subdivision regulations and in state law. So they either provide the amount of parkland, the 1.416 acres as parkland itself, or cash in lieu, or a combination of both. This applicant did not provide any parkland on the Hellgate Village subdivision plat. So they requested a variance. The variance was denied by City Council, so cash in lieu was the requirement.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Okay, next I have Brian and then Amber.
Thanks. Not sure if it's one question. I'm wondering if Ryan could speak to his letter, and I guess maybe as a preface, in looking at the materials and trying to ferret out some of the details from Neil's presentation and Ryan's letter. The appraisal that was done looks like it uses the prior zoning. Is that correct? And I guess I'm asking this to Ryan.
Yeah, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the zoning that was in place at the time that the subdivision was submitted and also acted upon by City Council. And then several weeks after the City Council approved the preliminary plat for the subdivision and issued conditions of approval, I think maybe 5 weeks later, the City Council rezoned or approved the rezone application. So after the subdivision was approved, it was rezoned, and it's currently rezoned to a higher density standard. And that was there was a question of which zoning should be applied in the appraisal, and there was some back and forth and some delay in the processing of the application based on I would say different interpretations of which zoning should apply. And I think the decision was to let that drop on this one and try and fix that or clarify in the regulations so it's clear exactly in a situation where there is a rezone between the subdivision coming in and the subdivision going to final plat, which zoning should apply for fair market value determination purposes. And so we're working on a pretty targeted fix to the subdivision regulations that we hope to have submitted to City Council within the next month or two.
Okay.
Okay, next Amber and then Stacy.
So because I haven't been through one of these yet, normally would cash, I know that when a variance is requested, that comes through City Council, but in the situation that we do cash in lieu of parkland, if there was no discrepancy in the appraisal, would that still come through us?
Mary McCrae, the subdivision regulations require council to approve the cash in lieu amount, but it would normally not go to an LUP committee. We would just do a referral to the consent agenda and state that the applicant, provided parkland dedication, city staff has reviewed it, they paid the cash in lieu amount, and city parks and development services have approved that. And then you would just see that that was paid.
Thank you. May I have a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to get my head around this. So, there's a difference within our regulations, what needs to maybe be cleaned up or reviewed so it isn't so up for interpretation. is when that appraisal would take place and also who would be doing that appraisal. Do you mind, Ryan, speaking to kind of what specific areas in our regulations, our subdivision regulations need to be cleaned up, and also whether I realize that there's some interpretation differences here, but based on kind of a reasonable interpretation, does this request follow our current subdivision regulations based on when the appraisal was done? And I know that who did the appraisal and all that. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so to answer the second question first, I think it's unclear enough that we felt like because of the onus is probably on us to make sure that our regulations are clear enough for everybody, that it would be hard to rely on our interpretation versus the developer's interpretation of what the subdivision regulation said to sort of have, a fight or let this drag out any further. And then so going back to what we think needs to be clarified in the subdivision regulations are two things, is clarified or possibly changed, I guess. So the first one is, or the simpler one would be to say that in an event where there's a rezoning of a subdivision between the time that it comes in and the time that the appraisal is done, that the zoning that applies either at the time of the appraisal or the zoning that's to be applied prior to final plat should be the zoning that applies in the appraisal. That's the approach taken by the city of Kalispell and other municipalities in Montana. So we think that's, applying it at final plat, which is generally around the time when these appraisals come in, is probably the approach to, is the timeline or the threshold to use in that situation. The other issue is what happens, and we simply just haven't provided for this at all in our regulations, but what happens when an appraisal comes in and city staff question the appraised value, either the approach that was taken or the value that was determined. There just simply isn't a provision in the subdivision regulations as they're currently written to allow for this. And so in looking at those and looking around at the other municipalities in Montana, some municipalities have the ability to have the developer and the city come to an agreement as to what the fair market value should be, in sort of a more informal approach, maybe canvassing realtors or using a recent purchase price rather than having to hire an appraisal to do some work, and just coming to a mutual agreement as to what the fair market value should be. For example, that's the way that the city of Kalispell works. And then in the event that the developer and the city can't reach an agreement as to what the fair market value should be that applies to a cash in lieu dedication, the city of Kalispell again uses a situation where the city hires an appraiser and the developer foots the bill for that appraisal. So that's an approach we could use. Chris Johnson has also suggested a couple of other approaches that could be used to evaluate the appraisal, make sure that it was done in conformance with appraisal standards. And he forwarded me or directed me to look at the approach that DNRC uses to, in a situation where an appraisal comes in and they have questions about whether the appropriate appraisal standards apply, you can hire another appraiser to do an appraisal review. So that's something we're going to be looking at to see if there's a better approach or a better way to at least allow for a second set of eyes on the appraisal to make sure that the public is being protected and the amount of money that's coming in is going to be enough to acquire the amount of land that would have otherwise been required to be dedicated. So that's the ultimate goal. So whatever we do to change the regulations, the goal is to make sure that we're getting the appropriate amount of parkland.
Okay, thanks. May I ask one more quick question, Jordan? Is there any, is there any precedent for this situation? Has this come up before? This kind of dispute over appraised value?
My understanding is that folks know of at least one other situation where this did come up before. And I think in that case, the city did hire another appraiser to do some work. And then I think maybe there was a negotiated agreement between the two parties based, using the two appraisals as the approach. I think in that case it was a little bit different because it was more clear that the appraiser that had done that work had done it incorrectly. And so the city going out and hiring an appraiser to do the work, applying the appropriate standards was probably more called for in that case. But that's the only case that I'm aware of. And it was, I think, a more stark issue than this one presents.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, I have Stacy and then Mirta.
Thanks so much. So basically, I did the quick math based on the formula presented in Neil's presentation, and the difference is about $22,000 if in terms of basing it on the appraisal price versus the what Neil called it here, and it's the based on a recent purchase price, and I mean the land is being built out based on the new zoning regulations, not the previous zoning regulations, correct? I mean, that's how this particular subdivision is utilizing its higher density based on the new zoning it was given.
Yes, I don't know if that's directed to me, but that's my understanding, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, I mean, that's, I think what we should be basing things on is what the new zoning is. So, I just wanted to, Neil, is my calculation of the math correct? Because I have it, it would be the cash in lieu, if you based it on the 900,000, would be $149,262.
I didn't do that math, but I did it in the past, and I think that's pretty close to what I remember. I think the question that you just asked is kind of the questions that we asked in the subdivision regulations. It says, make sure I'm not on mute, that the basically the fair market value is the value of the unsubdivided, unimproved land based upon the zoning designation that will apply to the proposed subdivision. That's kind of what we were saying. That purchase price that showed up in the appraisal from a year and a half or two ago was higher, and that was still based on the previous zoning. And that was a question that I had asked. And then at the time of the appraisal in January, the new zoning actually had taken an effect. And so that's what the other question is, that you have a higher density zoning that is now there. So the value should be higher based on, the appraisal also mentioned an appreciation of 5% per year. So I think there's a couple of questions that I had asked as part of those. And so I don't know what the actual value of the land is given the current zoning, which is the higher density. But yeah, if even based on the prior purchase price, it would be $2,000 more.
And I'll highlight that Mr. Nugent just sent a reference to the Subdivision and Planning Act. The cash donation means fair market value of unsubdivided, unimproved land, but that state law does not specify the point in time when the fair market value is determined. And so this is part of that dilemma as well. Stacy, did you have follow-ups?
No, I kind of want Ryan to, in plain speak, interpret what Jim just said, but I guess that right there gets to the, as Neil said, and this highlights the real true crux of this whole entire, conversation we're having right now. So
I would say that at least my opinion is that the state law would allow the city to define when what zoning should apply in the fair market value calculation. I would say that we weren't clear enough in our regulations to be able to rely on it in this case to push this issue. It's just there's a parenthetical after the statement that Neil read that adds some confusion to our subdivision regulations. It gives an example of when if a rezoning is accompanied by, or if the subdivision is accompanied by a rezone request, then it's supposed to use the new zoning in the appraisal. But in this case, because the subdivision came in separate from or unconnected to a rezone request, the argument was made that, you know, we should be applying the prior zoning, the zoning that was in place at the time the subdivision was approved. And so what we want to do is go in and fix the subdivision regulation so it's clear that if a subdivision is presented to the public during subdivision review as we're going to need or anticipating a rezone to a higher density, and then that rezone is approved by city council prior to an appraiser doing the work to figure out fair market value for a cash in lieu proceeding, that it should use the subsequently adopted zoning classification. But at the moment, it's not super clear in our subdivision regulations if that's the way it is now or not. So that's why we wanted to make sure we highlighted this issue, so when we bring the new regulations forward to you guys, that you understand that this is sort of what we're trying to fix.
Right, absolutely. I appreciate that that context and that clarification, because I think that, you know, the spirit of this, and that's great, obviously, is to be based on what actually is going to be built, and it's being built at the higher density level or the higher zoning level. So I feel like, yes, I understand that you kind of said it, I think, Ryan, that the onus is on us to have clear regulations. And so we definitely need to fix this, but it is frustrating because I feel like the neighborhood is being built at the higher density level, and that should be reflective in that. So I am all done. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Mary, did you want to add to that as well?
Yes, I was just gonna say the regulations under 3-080.7C require that the appraisals be provided. They're only valid if prepared within 6 months of the date that a complete final plat application is submitted for approval. So if it's a much earlier appraisal, it wouldn't apply. It has to be within 6 months of a submittal of a final plat approval.
Thank you. Okay, Mirta, and then Mirta's the last person on my speaker list. So before you go, Mirta, I want to read the public comment phone numbers one more time, just in case people are wanting to call in. So that's 253-215-8782 is the phone number. The meeting ID 960-049-3694. And again, if you do call in, you'll be placed in a waiting room, and then we can admit you to the meeting, and you can give your comment at that time. Go ahead, Mirta.
Thanks, Jordan. I guess I have a quick question about, and I should probably know this, but I can't remember. In slide 6 of Neil's presentation, there are three formulas, I guess. One is the requirement for park dedication for our subregs, and that is based on a 7.08 acres, and that is the net lotted area. But the land value per the appraisal is based on 8.538 acres, and that is total lot size. So I'm just curious as to why are we not using the same area for the calculation? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I could answer that if I can. So this subdivision has a couple public right-of-ways, one being Mary Jane, and I can't remember the name of the other road. And so the land appraisal is based on the total undeveloped land, so the block of 8.538 acres. In that development, there will be some public right-of-way, and so instead of calculating the new cost based on stuff that's already being dedicated as public right-of-way, you kind of exclude that from the calculation. And so the new area that's actually being developed is 7.08 acres. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And is this a good time to make the recommended motion, Jordan?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, make the recommended motion, please.
Okay, I appreciate that. That motion is in order. Additional discussion on the motion?
Jordan, can I speak?
Yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. So thank you very much. That's a great discussion. So when we submitted the subdivision, there's two ways that you get parkland from this particular development proposal. And the first one is park dedication or cash in lieu at the time of the subdivision. The second one is to do the park dedication when we do the townhome exemption development. The reason we asked for the variance from parkland dedication with the subdivision, because we were going to dedicate it with the townhome exemption development. We did not ask for no dedication of the parkland, so that's really important. Secondly, there seems to be an implication that we're trying to slip through a loophole here, and I want to clarify that. It's really important to me. We hired Stevens and Company, and Tom has been an appraiser in town for 4 decades now. They did a great job with the appraisal, and Neil did a great job with his questions, and they answered his questions very well. They're required to do fair market value. There's a number of definitions for value of property. And what happened here is the developer actually paid more than fair market value for that piece of property. But the requirement of the appraisal is to do fair market value. So let's hold that. Now, if you look at my last slide, my third slide, you'll see that we're providing 0.5 acres in our lawn common areas, which the homes surround, if you remember from last fall. The value of that 0.5 acres, if you look at Neil's slide, is somewhere between $35,000 and $45,000, right? The difference, Stacy, that you talked about was $22,000. So we're providing additional improved, not just dedication of land, but actually improved parkland with subdivision of that 0.5 acres. And then you recall that the development agreement that you guys approved back last fall also called for an additional dedication of 3 to 4 acres. And then if you were to look at the Dover Coal work, that 3 to 4 acres has expanded in their work to be 8 acres. Now, when we write the check for cash in lieu of park, when we file the final plat, right, we won't be building our first home will not be sold until the spring of 2021, almost a year from now. And the city of Missoula will have the time to use that money, right, when we write the check, when we file the plat this spring, right? So you'll have your interest on it too. So I just want to tell you that nobody has tried to avoid or evade or do anything except read your regulations. And what we're providing with our common area and with the cash in lieu is far in excess of any way you want to interpret the current regulations. And when we get done with the Dover Coal process, it looks like an additional 4 acres will come from this property, but perhaps the build grant will pay for that. But there's equity here. And if any of you think that we cut a corner or tried to slip through a loophole, please direct a question to me right now so I can dispel that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I've got a few hands up here. I've got Brian and Heidi and Amber. And so go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. And thanks for the comments, Nick. I was likely to direct a question to you, but I think you just responded to it. I guess to be concise and brief, I'm going to support the motion. I appreciate the comments you just made, Nick, and Neil, your due diligence with your questions in the process. And finally, I think, Ryan, your memo and your comments, kind of captured the spirit of what we're trying to see done, as well as the value of proceeding forward and cleaning up some of the language. So that's a long way of saying I'm comfortable supporting the motion.
Thanks, Brian. Heidi and then Amber.
Got to unmute myself. So my question is about that larger parkland area that we saw during the overall rezone and the development agreement. Is this cash in lieu in any way earmarked to go back into that future development of a larger park, or does it just go into general use?
So the cash in lieu goes into an account that needs to be spent within the area of the development per the master parks plan. So it's a quarter or like a half a mile for a neighborhood park and larger for a community park. And that can go to, I think I put it in the referral, it can go to anything from increasing the capacity for existing parks. So like Pleasant View isn't built out all the way. There's some other stuff in the master plan. Do we add a shelter as part of that? Or it can be included to purchase land in the area if it's available. So depending on where in this case, the subdivision has available land nearby. So we may look at that. The Mullen area master planning that Dover Coal's going through, we've sent them the development agreement that was and they just didn't show that current stuff. So I think it could either be included in that southern park or other parks in the area.
Okay, Nick, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just briefly. So Neil was gracious enough at the start of this to allow Kate Dinsmore and I to come over and meet with he and his staff. And Ryan Sudbury was there, and we really tried our best to figure out how we could take the cash in lieu requirement and actually apply it to dedicate land in a portion of that park. And I think everybody was trying to figure that out, but we just we couldn't figure out really how to do it. I think there's a path through that, but I think outside of an existing development proposal, we'll have to think about that. But I really appreciate Neil and his staff brainstorming with Kate and I and with Ryan to try to figure that out. So a little bit of history.
Thanks. Amber.
Yeah, so, I do believe that the onus is on us to make sure that all of our subdivision regulations are clear. I will be supporting it because of that. I have a little bit of kind of anxiety around it, as I think Stacy kind of articulated earlier. But I do believe that we can't move the goalposts, and we need to make the goalposts very, very clear to people to developers. One of the things that so I am going to support it. One of the things that I'm definitely thinking about and would just put a bug in everyone's ear as we look at rewriting these subdivision regulations is how quickly, the prices of our real estate are changing. I mean, if we look at the last couple of years, and we see it in the paper all the time, just how much our real estate prices are elevating. And, I think that Nick has a point, as far as appraisal versus fair market value versus purchase price. I mean, we're seeing again and again homes and properties going for above asking price. And so I just think we need to be cognizant of what that means in a community that's growing and that prices are going up. So those are just my comments, but I will be supporting it, and I will really look forward to seeing the rewrites so we're not in this position again. Thanks.
Thanks. Additional comment? Okay, I'm going to make one last call for public comment. And if we could get that slide one more time. So the numbers are on screen, and we'll just leave this up for a minute, just in case anyone does want to call in. And I guess while we wait for our 50-second delay to the live stream, does anyone have any additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. I'm just going to wait for a moment for this comment slide to get out to the live stream. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and move forward with a vote. We have a motion on the floor, and if Kendra, if you don't mind reading off the roll, we can do a roll call vote.
Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Martha Becerra.
Yes.
John Contos,
Yes.
Heather Harp,
Heather's absent.
Gwyn Jones,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Abstain.
Jose Ramos is absent. Sandra Beseca,
Yes.
Brian Losberg,
Yes.
Heidi West,
Sorry, gotta unmute. Yes.
I didn't vote, but I'm voting yes. It's Amber Cheryl.
Okay, so that's Amber Cheryl, and then this is Jordan, and I'm also going to vote yes. So that is 10 ayes, and the motion passes. And we can get that on our consent agenda. And that'll be this next Monday night. Anything else before we adjourn?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks
Jordan,
everyone.
not to be nitpicky, but I think that was 9 ayes, 1 abstention.
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me on that. 9 ayes, 1 abstention. And so without anything further, we will be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.